In this video, I'm going to be talking about the very first LSD trip I ever had. So, this took place about 2.5 years ago. I'm 18 years old now, and this first trip I had took place when I was about 16. It happened in the month of December on a Thursday that I stayed home from school pretending to be sick. Yeah, already has a good start to it. So before I get into the trip itself, I want to talk about why I decided to try LSD. So at the beginning of that school year, I had made friends with somebody and started going over to his house and hanging out with him. And prior to that, I was not a very social person. I was not that into hanging out with groups of people and just having a lot of people around me while I was smoking, which is what we were doing. And this friend that I made, I'm gonna call him Swim, I guess, Swim One. He liked to hang out that way, where he would go to his girlfriend's house and invite a bunch of people over. And they were really into rap music and all that. And they introduced me to Chance the Rapper, and I had never heard of Chance the Rapper before, and I loved it. I loved the music he made. Swim got me into that genre of music, rap music, and when he showed me Chance the Rapper, I fucking loved it. And if you've ever listened to Chance the Rapper, you know his album Acid Rap, and that album is basically an album talking about his experiences with acid through love and life and making music, and multiple songs in that album resonated with me when I started realizing that he was using LSD to think deeper and express himself in a different way through his music, and in relationships. It sparked my interest. I started looking into what LSD was and psychedelics in general, and I started researching LSD and just the general psychedelic scheme, but specifically LSD because that's what got my interest. And at the time I was getting further involved with spirituality and Buddhism, just kind of dabbling with those things. And as I continued researching LSD, I was beginning to realize its ties with hippies and the counterculture and spiritual awakenings and people leaving the country and to pursue a spiritual advanced life because of this drug experience they had. And I just started thinking to myself, what, psychedelics, I knew at the time, I had said to myself, yeah, I might try shrooms because they're like natural, like weed, and LSD, no, I'd never do that, that's synthetic, that's bad. But that's all I'd ever thought about it. And when I started researching these things further, I started seeing that they were actually interesting and very mysterious and safe. Most importantly, they were safe. I was wrong about it being dangerous and just physically dangerous. So, to get to the trip I had, I got my hands on some LSD, which took me forever. It took me so long to be able to get some LSD from somebody that I trusted, and they had actually taken it before me and reported what the trip was like, because I didn't want to take anything that somebody hadn't tried themselves. So I get the tab, and I'm home from school, and my brother, we're gonna call him Swim now, stayed home with me. He had graduated already and was home at the time, and he was going to watch over me as the trip sitter. I wanted him there for the first time, just in case anything got weird for me, because I had done my homework and learned about set and setting and just the deep mindscapes you can get yourself into on a psychedelic trip. Plus how long it lasts, I wanted somebody to be around. So I remember it was a Thursday morning, and I woke up in the morning and I knew that today was the day, like, I was going to try LSD today. And it was 6:54 in the morning when I got that little baggie out and put that tab on my tongue and was like, I'm doing this, I want to try this, let's do this. 6:54 in the morning, and I have began my LSD, my very first entrance to an LSD trip. And shortly after, my brother wakes up and he's like, so, are you ready to do this? And I'm like, I already dropped it. And he kind of found that funny that I was so eager to get going with it. But the first thing I really remember of this trip is I was sitting in my room and I was looking at all my tapestries and I was thinking to myself, what are they gonna do when I start tripping? And I started like faking myself out, placeboing, thinking that everything had this sort of pulsing color that was flashing through it, really dimly, dully, and I thought I was just messing with myself, and I probably was, but the first thing I really remember actually happening, because I couldn't really tell what it felt like in my body, other than this feeling it was this feeling in the back of my neck. It was slowly creeping up the back of my neck. It was this feeling of just like static warmth. It wasn't very prominent, but it was there, and I knew it was in the back of my neck. But this first thing that I really knew I was starting to feel it was I was looking out my sliding glass door at the treetops, and slowly these treetops began to turn and curl inward, and without even really thinking about it, I was turning my head with it and trying to keep the tops of the trees straight. And probably like 5-10 seconds later of following this turn, I realized, yo, what the hell? These trees are fucking bending right now. They're not actually doing that. And I was just trying to keep them straight by moving my head, and that's when I realized that the trip was starting to take effect. And then the next thing I remember is I was beginning to actually be well into the experience, and this was remember 2.5 years ago. I don't remember too much of it, but I just have a kind of general go at it, and that's what I'm telling in this. But the next thing I remember is I was looking at, we had wood stacked up in the house, and I was looking at the wood grain and the rings in each piece of chopped wood and the cracks in it, and it seemed to be moving. It seemed to be slowly moving away from the direct point I was looking at, while still seeming to remain in the same spot. And it was the beginning of my definitions of trippy, where you're looking at something move that's not actually moving. And this wood grain was just mesmerizing looking at it. I was like, wow. And I still wasn't even picking up on the fact that I am fucking tripping right now. And then I remember I wanted to make a cup of coffee. All I wanted to do was refill my cup of coffee. Speaking of which, take a sip. We had already had coffee made. I just needed to go pour another cup. But to me, the idea of refilling my cup with coffee was the most complex fucking scenario to me for some reason. Like I had no clue how to get myself another cup of coffee, and I remember I had to completely make a whole new pot of coffee. I was like, I can't just get myself a cup of coffee. I need to make a whole new pot. Whatever analysis went behind that, I don't fucking know, but that was my tripping mind fucking really, really getting going. And next thing I remember is we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and I had my cup of coffee. This was probably right after that pot got done. I had my cup of coffee, and I was watching the steam come off it, and I saw every fucking molecule of the steam. Every molecule that was making up the steam, and it was separate. There were individual particles moving through the air, and I saw it, and it was like this extremely finite mist that I was able to pick up on, and it was moving through the air, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, very visually stimulating. And I remember looking out the window at the sunset, and it was December during. There was snow everywhere. It looked like a fucking wonderland. Like, I didn't recognize what I was looking at, really. I saw my grandfather's house, which is across the field from where we live, but the idea that that's his house over there and we're in here made no fucking sense to me. It didn't click. And I remember the light was just blinding bright. Like, I don't know if it was because my pupils were so big or because of a visual I was having, but it was just very fucking bright. And I remember rainbows everywhere. Rainbows everywhere. I fucking loved it. It was so cliche to me to be seeing these multicolored rainbow streams in the peripherals of my vision, or in a cup of water, or in the beams of light that I was seeing when I was looking out that window. It was just fucking rainbow hues and tones everywhere. And next thing I remember is my brother was playing NASCAR, and I actually tried to play at one point, which was pretty fucking a fail. But what was most interesting about him playing NASCAR was the road. As he was driving around this fucking track, the stripes and the pavement and the sidelines were all shifting in color through reds and greens and yellows and oranges and purples and blacks and whites, and to the point where I couldn't tell what color any fucking thing was. I couldn't really tell you what color something was, especially if you were to ask me, because at that point it's gonna like exaggerate this color shifting effect. Hold on, this fucking thing popped up. If anything, being asked about what color is this, it's going to exaggerate that color shifting effect I'm having, where everything I was looking at, I couldn't tell what color it really was. And the next thing I remember is we were watching the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and I'll never fucking forget the plot didn't make any sense at all. I wasn't following what was going on, and it was just this hilarious like relationship between this serious man and this mysterious woman, and I was just, the fucking story I was building in my head was hilarious. And not to mention, everything was morphing the whole time. He'd walk into the room and his suit would be fucking purple and then green and red, and I'd like be leaning because I think it's the like angle I'm at that's making everything that color. But nope, I was just tripping out. What else do I remember about this experience? I remember petting my cat, and I would rub her, and seeing the trail behind where I pet her was like flowing fur type thing to it. It was fucking crazy. And I think at one point me and my brother went on a walk out in the woods, and before we went on this walk, he was fucking with me, not like malevolent, but like he was just being silly. And I asked him, I told him I'm gonna bring my gloves because it was winter. I was like, I'm gonna bring my gloves, and he said, how many? And obviously that's a silly fucking question. How many gloves? I have 2 hands. But to me, in that moment, it was so fucking, it was an extremely epiphanous like question. Like, how many gloves should I bring, you know? And he started dying of laughter. But no, we fucking went on this walk out in the woods, and I remember I couldn't see shit. You know how it is with snow everywhere on a bright day, you can't see anything. Plus, I'm tripping, my pupils are dilated. I needed sunglasses, and I looked fucking hilarious out there. I was wearing a beanie with these sunglasses on, and I was just whacked right out of it. So happy for the first time to be experiencing this. And we were walking through the woods, and we got to a gravel pit that's a ways into the woods, and I remember I couldn't differentiate what was in the front and what was in the back. Like, my spatial orientation was fucked. Like, we were sitting on this cliff type thing and looking over the gravel pit, and I couldn't tell what was far away and what was close, and it was the trippiest thing ever. And at one point, we went back to the house, and I wanted to stay outside, so he was like, alright, I'm gonna stay in here, you can just go out and do what you want. And I fucking wandered around in my field, looking down at my feet for like 30 minutes or something. He actually took a video of me while I was doing this, and he just zoomed out onto the field, and you saw me just fucking wandering about in the field, looking down at the ground, like aimlessly walking around. And I remember doing that, and I couldn't fucking tell you what I was thinking, but it was just, that trip was definitely a really good example to me, a good entrance to the psychedelic world of LSD. I understood how a whole fucking culture was revolved around this. I understood why the people in that culture acted the way they did. I understood how it makes you think deeper and completely shreds your perspectives on things into this new pattern. I saw so much potential in it. And I'd have to say that first trip I had on LSD is what really showed me the light, as we all call it, with many different meanings associated with it. LSD allowed me to see fucking A, man, like, there is something going on. And after that trip, for like a month, I was going through insane, like, just spiritual awakening type shit, where my life seemed ego death shit, prolonged ego death type shit, where like I'm seeing how I present myself as a person to everybody, and I'm trying to act like this person and present to even me, whoever the fuck is watching all this, who I think I am, and all my posters and all my statues and my incense and my mala beads and all this shit that I was building up, and like I was just seeing the chasing of the ego in association with gaining spiritually, I guess, and it was really fucking me up at first. Like, I felt fake. I felt like a robot ran by emotions and chemicals. I thought everybody was lost and damned. I went through tons of just shit, but that's straying from what we're talking about. That LSD trip I had definitely hurled me into the abyss of awareness and here-ness and the deeper side of things. So that's it for this video. I hope you got something out of it, and I will be back with more.